All right, for this session of Mixed Media Basics, I thought we would go through a texture medium, specifically sand paste. Now, it comes from a few different variety of names out there. So I'm going to go through and do this a little differently than I've done in the past. I am going to show you each brand, and on the screen we'll go through pricing and sizes and that kind of information. And then at the end, I'm going to kind of compare them to each other. So I've got some swatch cards here that we're going to swatch each of them out on. And I'll label them on the back, the brand and the name of them, so that I can tell once we get to the putting them through the test and seeing the quality of them for different things that I like to look for in a sand paste. But then I'm also going to show you how to make sand paste. And I believe I've already done this in a video, but it wasn't a Mixed Media Basics. It was an art journaling video. So I will link that above for you if you wanted to see that. But in this, at the end of everything, I am going to show you how to make your own sand paste. And the nice thing about making your own sand paste is that when you're out of it, it's really easy to make it, and you can fine tune what you like the most about sand paste. So the first brand I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about not because it's available anymore, but the reason why I want to talk about the Marabou Mousse, as they call it, which is a sand paste. This, I want to preface and let you know, this is no longer a product that's available. It used to come in colors. So like this was the mistletoe, which was this gray green, and a vanilla, which is this, oh, I really think of this as kind of like a buttercup yellow. But the reason why I hoard this is because it's my favorite sand paste out there. And the reason I like it is because it's really soft. A lot of the other ones have more coarse sand in it. This one has very small particles in it. And it's just that perfect place. So I want to show it to you because I think that this is very similar to the homemade or made by me DIY sand paste. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to show it to you. So I'm going to show it to you in this mistletoe just because I'm trying to get rid of it. I've had it for quite a while. These came in 3.38 fluid ounce tubes, and they were they all had color in them. And so even just out of the get-go, as this is coming out of here, you can see it is very, I think you can see it anyways, it's very small granules. So I'm going to get some off of here. Should really have my palette knife. And I'm going to lay some of this down. You can really see how soft this is. How absolutely fine of a granule of sand there's there. And I will actually pull out this yellow as well, the vanilla, and just put it side by side. I didn't buy these for colors. I bought them because I really like the texture of the sand that they used. Just very. So I will do this for each of the types of sand paste I'm going to go through today. I will do it with my finger and I'll do it with a palette knife so you can see how it behaves. Okay, so that is the Marabou acrylic mousse, and again, no longer available. I'm going to set that to dry. And the next thing I'm going to go through is the Liquitex Basics Coarse Texture Gel. And this, like it says, is coarse. And I really do like this because of how coarse it is. So in contrast to the other sand paste being so smooth and soft, this is the coarse. And again, this is a sand paste, even though we don't really see it listed on the packaging. And it really looks fairly smooth on my finger here. And I think you can tell how much, it's hard because I added a lot of texture here. Also with the basics, the Liquitex Basics, there's a less sand and more of the gel in this brand, whereas in this there's lots of sand. So that's one other thing that's different about these two brands. Jeez. So now I'm going to apply it with my palette knife. And there it is, wet. So I'm going to set that aside and we'll move on to our next one. All right, so this time we are going to take a look at the Finnabair. This is Prima product. Art Extravagance Texture Paste in the white sand. And I'll have all the pricing information here for you. And it's very thick, hard to squeeze out, which tells me it may have a lot of sand in it, and it feels very coarse with a lot of sand. You can actually see how coarse that is. So that's gonna really give you a lot of texture. I'm gonna also apply it with my hand. It is very hard to squeeze out of this tube. Now that didn't have as many coarse bits in it. So it has a variety of fine and extremely coarse. I don't know if this is a good thing in a tube. It applied a lot smoother with my finger than with the palette knife, which is really quite unusual. Let's see if I get it back in. It really does not want to close. And so we're gonna let this dry along with our others and move on to the next one. All right, so now we're gonna go over and kind of take a look at the Golden Fine Pumice, and this is considered a gel. I'll just show you. So it looks like a gel. It's very thin. It's not pasty. I think of it as a light paste. But it's definitely a gel. And if you were to feel it, it is very, very fine. Very fine. So I'm going to put it in on one side with the palette knife. it has the ability to get incredibly smooth. So I am going to then get some on my finger like we've been doing. And I'm gonna apply that with a little bit more texture to it. Now, as opposed to like the Finnabair that was very crunchy because it was so coarse, this is very, very smooth, and it almost has a kind of frothy feel to it, but not as much as what you get from this. This feels a lot more, well, moussey. It's not as smooth as this one, but it's frothy. I don't even know how. You can definitely see here, and let me grab the sample. I think it's dried. It really dries with a lot of texture. You can see the grains to it, and it's just got a real frothy feel to it. It's very soft, similar to this. This is finer than this is. So anyways, we're gonna let this dry. All right, so the next one we're going to review is the Golden Extra Coarse Pumice Gel. Again, this is just sand paste, really. It's just in a gel. And this is a new, oh, that is very chunky. That might be fun, challenging, but fun. So we have started with using a palette knife, which I had a feeling would be a little challenging just because the sand pieces are so large. And that's really the troubles I had with the Finnabair, because it was very textured, very coarse. All right, so there is that with the palette knife. And then I'm gonna take some with my finger. And unlike the others, because it is so coarse, it's hard to get it smooth. So these really look very similar. Actually, I think the finger one is a less smooth. But you can barely tell that. That is very chunky. I might need to get some saran wrap over that. Some press and seal is what I like to use. And then there it is before it's dry. So I'm gonna put this aside to dry. So then the next product that we're going to review that you can purchase, and this is the last one we're going to review, is the Liquitex Natural Sand Gel. And this is a thick gel in their effects line. And again, this is new to me, so it hasn't even been opened yet. From what I can tell, it's very soft. It is very smooth. It's actually very fluffy. It feels very fluffy. It feels, this feels very similar to the Marabou Mousse. It's very whipped feeling. Definitely has a very light and fluffy texture to it. Okay, so now I'm gonna apply it with my finger to get some added texture. Try and bulk that up a little bit like I have the others. And this is definitely white. And that may be really the difference between the sand and the pumice, as pumice is generally a gray tone. Medium grade sandy texture. Well, it feels very smooth and fine to me. Very small particles. So we'll see how this dries. So next, now I'm gonna show you how to make your own sand paste. So you need sand. I suggest you buy the crafting sand because it's clean. It doesn't have dirt and debris in it. So I did buy a natural sand, so there is some other colors in there. But you can buy a white sand or whatever color you want. So you're gonna need sand, and you're gonna need a shallow mixing tray. I suggest the shallow because it's just easier to transfer it into whatever you're gonna store it into. And then you're gonna need some matte gel medium. You can use glossy, but I prefer the matte. And you're gonna need something to stir it with. I suggest a kind of a rounded palette knife. Something that has a more rounded tip. It's nice for stirring it. It depends on what you prefer and what you have, of course. But this is what I prefer. And this is my little spoon for getting my sand out. It's a nice measuring tool to kind of get a little bit, and yeah. So the first thing I like to do is I like to put my matte medium into my mixing container, and I usually start off with just a dollop. We can always change it from there. And also the ratio of sand to gel is up to you as well. It depends on how thick you want it, how granular you want it. So I'm going to start off with just, I would say that's probably a teaspoon. Actually, I'm going to start off with 1.5 teaspoons. And then we're going to just mix. Sometimes getting it into the sand into a corner, you can then push the gel into the sand, and that is very helpful for getting it incorporated. And then a little bit of a stir. Now I do sell tester kits. The tester kits come with matte medium gel, a smaller bottle. It comes with the palette knife that I prefer to use, just like this one. It comes with a small jar of natural sand and a container to not only stir it up into, but store it into. And this is will make enough for you to test it and see if it's something that you want to create for yourself. And if you do, then you have the matte medium and the palette knife to be able to make more. You just have to purchase a bag of craft sand for yourself. And they do have some craft sand in smaller containers at the Dollar Tree is where I've located some. I'm not sure if your Dollar Tree will carry them, but I did see them at my Dollar Tree. And then you can make more from that. But this way, at least you can do a project with the sand paste and play with it a little bit. This is going to make you enough to fill this container. And that should be enough to play with and see if it's something you want to make more of. But those are available in my shop. There'll be a link down below. And so that teaspoon and a half, I feel, was a great amount of sand with that first dollop that I had. This feels right. It's definitely a paste. It's not falling off when I shake it. So it's definitely a paste. And where is my paper square? Okay, here it is. Homemade sand paste. Now, if you wanted to make the same stuff and make it more coarse like this, all you need to do is find a coarse sand. So I believe that they do have craft coarse sand available as well as extra fine. But this is just regular grade crafting sand. Sometimes these can be found in the where all the silk plants and stuff are. All right, so I'm gonna apply some to this side with the palette knife. And then I'm going to apply some to the other side with my finger. Just so that you can see how you can build up the texture and get different looks with different applications. Yeah, that should be good. As you can see, a little goes a long way. So we're gonna let this dry. All right, so the first ones we did was the Marabou Mixed Media Acrylic Mousse. And this is dry. And then we did the Liquitex Basics Coarse Texture Gel. Hard to see here. We're gonna add color to these here in a little bit. Then we did the Finnabair Texture Paste in white sand. Really glossy, even where it's left. The whatever the medium they have in it was a glossy one. So this was really thick. It did really wrinkle this paper, I noticed as well. Then next was the Golden Extra Fine Pumice Gel. Not glossy, very matte. Definitely a gray pumice tone to it. And then we did the Extra Coarse Pumice Gel by Golden. Also matte, very textured. Very textured. And this was put on with the palette knife, and this I did with my finger. So anyways, there's that. And then this is the Liquitex Effects Natural Sand Gel. It is a gel. It is glossy. You can definitely see the gloss there. There is a slight more texture on this side that I added it with my finger. Alrighty, so our handmade sand texture paste has dried. And look at that texture. It has dried. It is completely lumped up there. Nice form. So that is our handmade sand paste. We're going to go through and we're going to add a couple of mediums. I'm going to use some alcohol ink spray and some Liquitex Vivid Lime Green acrylic ink. So I'm going to try and do this. It'll be a little off because these are colored, but we should be able to see how nicely it gets into the crevices. So I'm going to just do it on one side and then try and do the acrylic ink on the other side. The Marabou used to be my, art sprays used to be my favorite. They're non-water soluble, they are very intense color, but they no longer make them. And so now I've been making these alcohol ink sprays, and I can get them as intense as I want. Usually I put about 40 drops per, I think this is a 2-ounce bottle. And fill it with alcohol ink, but I have a video. Okay. So on this one, you really can't see it. I think it's mostly because of the color in the Marabou mousse. These are no longer on the market. You can really see how fun it is though with the color peeking through there. The alcohol sprays dry very quickly. Okay, that's the Marabou. This is the Liquitex Basics. You can really still see some of the shine from the glossy. Does not get covered up by that alcohol spray. This is the Prima. Again, this was really glossy and you can still see that gloss. Unfortunately, there was some text behind this before I sprayed it with the alcohol spray, and it's making that pen bleed a bit and it's coming through, but yeah, not much difference there. This is the Finnabair. All right, this is the Golden Extra Fine. The alcohol spray isn't totally dry on that. You can see it. It's kind of sitting on the surface more with this fine pumice. This is the Extra Coarse on the Golden. You see a little bit of shine, which I didn't see before. And it might be just because it's still wet in there. Because this was really matte in comparison to some of the other brands. A liquid color would be a benefit here. It'll get into it unless you're wanting to keep it more surface color. We'll see how that dries. This is the Liquitex. It was very glossy. This is the sand, the white sand, I think it was called. Really glossy, you can still see that coming through. And then this is our homemade. And you can see there's just really good saturation of that color on there. Slight difference between the color, how it looks on the paper, and then how it looks where the paste was. All right, I'm gonna give that some time to dry here, and then we'll take a look at that. Okay, so I've got these dry, and here it is, that Liquitex color on the Marabou. Of course, it's a little skewed because of the color of the actual paste, but it really did get into the crevices nicely. This is the Liquitex Basics Coarse, and you can see that coarse texture. It's got some peaks and valleys right there. I don't know if you can see that very well. There you go. So this was the side we put down with the palette knife. This was with my finger. This is the Prima Finnabair. And again, we were able to get some good height off of that. It's interesting how it skewed the color a little bit in certain areas. The gel that is made up of this it's very glossy. You can see some of that shine there, and where the gloss is, I mean where the gel is without any sand, it really resisted the color. That's something to keep in mind. This is the Golden Fine Pumice. So it does have a gray tone, so it does skew the color a little bit. Wasn't able to get any real texture out of this, except for where the bulk of it is, but it's very fine. And this is the Extra Coarse. And of course you can see that it's very granulated. It's not uniform peaks. It's definitely wherever whatever they used. I'm guessing it's gritty pumice that hasn't been. But again, it was very glossy. Oh no, this wasn't glossy. But because the particles are bigger, you can definitely see the gel where it repels, resists the color. This is the Liquitex White Sand. It was very glossy. You can still see that gloss, even a hint of it coming through where this more opaque liquid acrylic ink is. Again, it does skew the color a little bit, which I think is interesting. And then this is the homemade sand texture paste that we made. It definitely has a rise, a lift to it. You can see how we were able to really get some nice peak on that. Colored it really nice. We have a very little bit of discoloration with that Liquitex color, maybe where I got it thinner with the water. I didn't think about that. That could have done this as well. So a little bit of resist in our gel up here where it was thinner on the edges. Okay, now I want to show you some of my some fun favorites, one of which is catching texture with gesso. So I'm going to go in with white gesso. You can see how fun that is to catch the texture. I love to catch the low points and the very high points, and anything in between remains the color that it was originally. And we're going to have a lot more of that in between showing, because we have very high peaks here. Separation between the high and the lows. that's using some gesso. Another thing that I really like to do is I like to come in with Stabilo All and see how it runs into the crevices. So I'm just going to come in on these center areas here, kind of go around, maybe do a little bit on it with the Stabilo All, and just give it a spritz and see how it bleeds in. It's one of my favorite things to do, is just let the medium, in this case the Stabilo, do what it does naturally when it comes in contact, when it gets liquefied like that or activated by the water and comes in contact with the sand. So much fun. Now this is the homemade, and I think you're able to see why I really love this homemade sand paste. Okay, this is the Liquitex white sand paste. Got a little carried away there with the water. Let it bleed in a little bit. And you can really see that is a fun way to use the sand paste. Oh, this might be really fun with this highly textured, extra coarse texture paste by Golden. A little much more challenging to get it on top here. There we go. Have to work a little bit harder at getting that in. But a lot of fun. This is the Golden Extra Fine. Kind of just wants to run over the top. You really can't see how it goes in between the grains of the sand, which is what we experienced as well with the gesso. But it still has a demarcation of where that was applied. All right, this is the Prima, the Finnabair sand paste. Definitely can see more of the grains. We did get some nice bulk on this. All right, this is the Liquitex Basics Extra Coarse, or Coarse Texture Gel, not extra coarse, just coarse texture gel. And you can definitely see the granules. Nice. And this is the Marabou mousse sand. Well, it's really not called a sand mousse, it's just called mousse, but it's sand paste. Oh, carry away with the water there. You can definitely see the granulation, the sand granules. Really brings that texture out. So these are the different, all the different mediums that we have used, and really for the price, the cost, I would have to say price for how it works. I definitely think the homemade is the best route to go. I really prefer the homemade version. That's why I make my own. I am excited about playing with this extra coarse and just seeing what we can get out of it, pushing it a little bit further. So yeah, I hope this has really helped you to make some decisions about whether or not you want to work with sand paste, or if you do already and you're just looking to see what some of the different aspects of are the different brands out there. I hope this has helped you make some better informed decisions. So thank you for coming along and being part of this month's Mixed Media Basics Sand Paste.